Good afternoon, everyone. There was some debate. I thought Otto was the moderator. He thinks I'm the moderator. We don't really know. So guess what? You get to hear from both of us. I don't know whether it's equal time, but he's got more handouts than I do. So what we're talking about this afternoon, and the session is entitled Dancing Without Destination. And when I read the synopsis that the EC put on this session, I went, okay, what do they mean? And here's how I would interpret this. Both Otto and I are very involved in dancing where it's not mainstream, it's not plus, it's not one of the established programs. And whether you talk about a one-night party or a once-a-month community dance or any of those things, those are events where the person is going to a dance for their own enjoyment, and they may come once in a lifetime, they may come once a month. A lot of Otto's stuff is once a year, a lot of my stuff is once a year, and we do groups over and over, and I'll let Otto address what he does because I don't thoroughly understand it, and I'm sure he will address it. The important thing from, I think, both Otto's and my perspective is when we say without destination, we say that it's not a matter of where you end up. It's the journey that you use to get there and how much fun you have in doing it. If what your objective is having a great time and being entertained, and that I'm talking about the dancer, then you're going to attend different kinds of events than if you want to be entertained for every other week for the rest of your life. That's a destination program versus the kind of things we do. So do I really want to let you go first, or do you want me to go first? And
are you finished for the day? I heard myself. Do I sound okay? Yeah. Number one, I looked at what I have, and I thought that we should have some ushers pass the collection plate, because I'm very sold on what I do. Okay? I think it's a mission, and when you look at the handout, you're going to see that I address it as answering the call. Now, for many, answering the call only pertains to ministry, whether it's college ministry or going out and being a missionary or a church pastor. I think that a one-night stand caller or a event caller or a teacher teaching first night of lessons and through the series of lessons is answering a call. It's a higher calling, in my estimation, than being an advanced caller or a challenge caller, because you're the lifeblood of what's going to happen. And I feel that way, and I have felt that way all the years that I've been calling, almost 40 years. And so when I look at the Dancers Without Destination, and I have it's 6 pages long, I look at who's contacting you and what your job is to entertain these people. And I know that when I walk in a hall, I did not have an NFL draft. I can have people with 2 left feet. I can have people that are so shy they will not get up. I can have people sometimes handicapable. I do a lot of Baptist churches, so I know that any Baptist event, I'm going to have at least 20% hard shell. And they will be in the hall, but they would be struck dead if they got out on the floor, because they're the old Baptists. And the old Baptists are not ever going to dance. So I never try to get them up. But I think that to be a one-night stand caller requires more skill than a plus caller. Because you have, every time you enter a hall, you're entering a hall of an unknown. And you must start adapting from the moment you finish setting up your equipment. Well, you have to adapt before you set up your equipment because you have to find out what the acoustics are. You have to find out where the plug's at because it's a hall you've never been in. Last year, I had to figure out how to call in a parking lot that sloped in two directions with 1,000 people in the dark. And how my wireless mic was going to reach 300 feet away from the sound equipment. So you're always adapting. And so I always feel that you have to be more professional, have more technology knowledge upon entering the area of calling for the dancers with no destination, if it's a one-night stand. Now, Dancers with No Destination can be the ABC program. But if you're doing the ABC program and you plan on teaching 12 moves, the first night you do A, and now you're going to come back and you're going to do B, what happens if you have half your dancers never went to A? So now you have to adapt that program that night totally to cover what you had already covered. And you might not ever get to B. So I look at this in a totally different light than most callers. I only do about 80 a year. I looked at Robert Bob Riggs thing here, and he has a count of how many dancers he calls to a year. I call to about 20,000 non-dancers annually. And I call on beaches, on mountainsides, parking lots, basketball courts. And this past year, I called in a hall upstairs that I swear the floor moved 4 inches every time they hopped on the Cotton Eye Joe. I have never had a CD jump track, and I couldn't keep the CD in track. And I told Hot Rod, my wife, we need to stand near the walls because the center of the floor was going to go away. I think that you have to be really prepared to be able to call couples dances, line dances, Sicilian circles, mescalanzas, squares, easy mixers, anything and everything that you could ever imagine, and your background has to be so that you can think on your feet and write choreography at a moment's notice to fit the event. And maybe I'm different. Calvin calls one-nighters, but I am always looking as I'm doing one tune, and I only prompt it about 3 times, maybe 4 times through, and then I shut up. And I go off the floor and start to do a search for the next thing that I want to do. And I put it on and cue it up, ready so that when that dance ends, I'm back in the center and we're doing another teach. I teach visually. My wife and I do all the demos, and we use the floor for demos. If I want to set up trios, the first thing I say, I need 3 expert volunteers. And I look for people that I have looked at as they came in that have a lot of personality, and I choose those people that are just having a great time before they ever walked in. And a lot of times if I want to do a partner thing, I'll choose 2 guys because I do a gender-negative dance so that the guy on the right is dancing a girl's part, but he doesn't know it. So, but I address one-nighters and teaching in a totally different view. I taught for years lessons, and I always wanted to make the dancer a total success by the end of the evening. And I always looked at the dancer as $1. Maybe y'all don't look at it that way, but I was in sales for 35 years, straight commission, and I don't know how callers can start a set of lessons and not look at every dancer in there as worth a lot of money. I look at a square of dancers over a 5-year period as worth $12,000. Maybe not $12,000 to me, but $12,000 within the square dance community. There are $6 a night for a dancer. 5 years, you total it up. So if you're lackadaisical about your presentation and you're not prepared and you're not professional, you have lost $15,000 per square. Everything is money. I don't care what you're doing. It's the joy of what you're doing, but you've got to look at it as I was talking to a caller earlier, and he's going back to college. Why? Because the lake's running dry. And why did it run dry? We didn't teach real well. And we didn't retain. So you've got to always look at the prospect. In what I've written, I truly believe that the dancer, when they walk in the hall for the first night of lessons, is not sold on what they're going to do. And it's the caller's job to be the salesman. It's the caller's job to take total control of that room. There is not an officer in that club should ever have hold of the mic. There is not one announcement should be made about refreshments for next week and who's going to do it. There's not one announcement should be made about where that club could go visiting. Because that person came in thinking they're only going to dance one night a week. Now you're going to tell them and give them ideas that they're going to have to graduate down the road, and now they're going to have to commit 2 and 3 nights a week? They're kicking tires at first and second night. They're not committed. And until they have tried the suit on or kicked the tires and driven the car, they're not sold. So don't give them all that garbage that's negative. And that's when I was teaching in modern Western Squares, I did not let anyone make an announcement the first 6 weeks of lessons. No one had the mic. I controlled it. Because you have got to sell square dancing. And club members and officers especially make too many announcements that are negative. So I always worked so that we could sell the dancer. Now, I don't know how an ABC program works. Nassar and Jerry Story contacted me several years ago because they knew I was doing a lot of one-nighters. And they wanted me to put together a 3 one-nighter series. I said it's impossible. Because in what I do, I'm not back. Now, at a campground or retirement area, you could possibly do that. But I can't do it. So
I'll let him rest for a moment. Let me talk about a couple of things that are in my handout. One of the things, there's a graph on the back of the sheet, a pie chart. And one of the things is I took a look at the world as I sort of visualize it, and I'm being optimistic here. But if you say that 60%, if you had 100 people out of the general population, and you said 60% will never dance in their lifetime, never do our kind of dance in a lifetime.
They're all up here. You can get them when it's all over with.
All right.
You can get them when they're all, there's plenty.
Now everybody will, you can debate with me the numbers, but I'd have no statistics behind these. This is all gut feel, but I'm using it as an example. If 60% never dance, 25% are what I refer to as the every so often, which might be once in a lifetime. Then there's a 10% category which might dance maybe once a year. Well, you only have 5% left. You only have 5 people left. And I'm saying 4 of those, well, they might dance 12 times a year, i.e. once a month. And there might be 1% of that, i.e. one person out of that 100, and I think that's being very optimistic, maybe dances twice a month, 24 times a year. So if you took these numbers, and I suspect that these are all high, you're looking at a population that says only 40% of the dancers are ever going to participate in our activity, or 40% of people are ever going to, in their entire lifetime, are ever going to participate in our activity. What Otto and I see in the party world are those once a year or every so often less than once a year kind of people. And I I look at Otto's list and I read his handout, and I'm totally in agreement. We talked earlier, and some of you were in the session on dance parties that Greg Anderson and I did, and we said a lot of the same things. What is it that what we're being brought in to do? We're brought in to provide entertainment for a one-time thing, period. That's the end of it. So we have an objective to provide entertainment for the length of period of that event. You're not going to do that with a whole bunch of material, a whole bunch of calls. You're going to do that with a lot of dances and a lot of variety, all the things that Otto mentioned. Lines, facing lines, squares, couple dances, mixers, etc. And all of us that do these kind of parties use these things, and we're pretty emphatic that most of us are very emphatic that we're not going to use a single dance form. There are a couple of folks around that do dance parties that only use squares. I get their business later because people have more fun doing the variety of dance and it being simpler, and they're not having to spend time learning. If it takes, and I'm sure Otto does, in fact, as I've seen Otto do this, when I'm conducting a dance, they're learning stuff on the fly. There's nothing you don't spend time standing in a square and saying, you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4, unless it's part of the entertainment. They end up being involved in an environment where learning is happening on the fly, but they don't know that they learned. They realize only that they had fun dancing. When they go home at the end of the evening, that's what they remember. And whether it's the first night of class or whether it's a one-night event, that's what they have to remember, and that's to Otto's point.
About the fourth dance in the evening, in fact, I don't even know when I do it, but I will use the terminology I would like. And if y'all were at the Sunday afternoon or Sunday noon thing that I did, you heard me use the terminology I'm going to add to your repertoire. And I use that only to indicate to those that are out there that they've been learning something. They've been out there dancing for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and lo and behold, they never realized they had learned a thing. And when I tell people that I never do a right and left grand, that I never do a left Alaman, and I'll do a 2.5-hour dance and I'll never put them in a square, they think I'm crazy. But I'm not hired to lock them in to a set order of only 7 other people. I am a hired professional entertainer to unite 300 people into one cohesive group to do something later. Which means that since I do a lot of Christian camps, whether they be Methodist camps or Baptist camps or Mormon camps, and college ministry, my job is to take those students that are members of the church and unite them with those students that are there that are not members. When I'm hired by a corporation and they bring in executives from all over the country, and in fact from all over the world, my job the first night that they arrive is to unite all those people into fellowship with each other so that the next morning in their corporate meetings, they don't fuss. They work as a team. Now, I don't know if any of y'all ever done corporate events, but an event planner will have the seating arrangements for the 2 or 3 days, and every meal, everyone is shuffled around the room so that they meet everyone during the event. I do it in 2 hours. And so I am not going to put them in squares. I also don't do single dance type things. In other words, if I do a line dance, I'm not going to just do a line dance. I'm going to do 3 line dances. If I do a couples dance, or as a mixer, I'm going to do 3 mixers. I'm going to do 3 trios, 3 mescalanzas, 3 Sicilian circles. And the reason is, every time you break down what you're doing and change to another formation, you consume time. And when I do 3s, we are going from one tune to the next to the next. Saturday night, I looked up in a 2-hour dance. I did 26 dances, folks. 26 different dances. That's a lot of dances to teach non-dancers to dance and do 26 in 2 hours. But the formations lent themselves. When I had them in Sicilian circles, I immediately went to contras with the lead couple closest to the grand center of the room. So I had contra lines all the way around, like spokes on a wheel. And then I did 3 contras. And then I took the Sicilian circles and swung them 1/4 turn. Now I had couples. Pick up your couples. And I could care less whether or not the guy is on the wrong side of the girl. I then did a dance. I showed it Sunday. I taught California Twirl, not by CALLERLAB definition. I called it as person on the right duck under the joined arms, joined hands, and the person on the left walk around. 2 guys can California Twirl by that definition. You can put them in a square. You can have heads pass through, walk by each other, California Twirl. Sides pass through, California Twirl. Everyone circle left, 1/2. You're home. Because they have no destination, they don't need to know that that's an illegal move, according to the definitions. So, now ABC, you cannot do that. You have got to stay within the definitions, because sooner or later, they're going to leave that program and progress to mainstream. Because ABC is strictly to entice people to test drive the vehicle. Negative, that's what they're wanting to do in the Valley. They're wanting to entice people to try out square dancing in its simplest form over a period of nights, so they can go ahead and entice them into their mainstream programs.
The comment was that's one area's definition of ABC.
But, when I talk to them, that's their whole idea.
No, when I talk to Jerry, that's not his idea.
Yeah. So, but I don't get involved in ABC because, number one, I live about 100 miles from Houston. And so I don't do a lot of driving back and forth to Houston to call repeat dances. But I will tell you that if you do a bang-up job as a one-nighter for no matter what age group in a church or a college, the word gets around and you will be doing every age group in that church. And in Tyler, Texas, I do 3rd and 4th graders, 5th and 6th graders, middle school, high school, college, single adults, young married couples, and older single adults. So when they file that 1099, it's big. Because the word got around the church that if you want entertainment. Now I'm doing a wedding this fall from that church. I don't look at it as an end, but I look at it as I'm the messenger of the goodness of what square dancing can do for people and organizations. And I feel like an evangelist when I do this. And there are some that think I become too religious, but I think it's my calling. And the churches think it's my calling.
Just to add to that, a couple of things. Otto mentioned the genderless or gender negative, I call it gender neutral or genderless dancing. Most of what I do is also genderless, and most of it is because I'm working with youth groups. And people have come in, and I had a youth camp where I had the counselors moving the boys and the girls around to get them all paired up, and I actually talked to the coordinator so that the next time around they wouldn't do that. I said, I want them dancing with who they want to dance with, because I really don't care. And in fact so when I tell them to find a partner, whoever they select is the partner. I don't really care or want to care whether it's two boys, two girls, a boy and a girl, to dance with. I can call choreography of dances. I can get them doing dances with any orientation or any pair made up of two people if I'm doing couple-oriented dances. I'm not worried about it. Now, they're not doing closed position dance material in particular. And when they're doing swings, they're doing two-hand swings and things of that nature. So there's a lot of ways to do this that makes it fun for everyone and doesn't put the pressure on. Right now, for example, I'm doing between 200 and 250 kids at a time for 9 dances up in Estes Park at 9,500 feet above sea level. 90 minutes, nonstop, high energy, excitement, enthusiasm. The boys walk in the door on the west, the girls walk in the door on the east, and we're dancing by the time they hit the middle of the floor. And I portrayed it to my wife when the first time I ever did this, and I said it's like being shot out of a cannon. And it truly is. It's an experience you have to experience, or you have to live to know. But you're dancing nonstop, and just like Otto said, I do at a minimum 2 of the same type of dance, sometimes 3, just like Otto, of the same formation of dance in a sequence, because you can move from one to the next very rapidly. That's a key thing. The genderless is one aspect. The being able to move from one style to the next is an aspect. Having the variety of dance so that you can do 3 of each.
I've got a question. How many of you do, let's say, 5 one-nighters a year? How many of you do 10? Okay. How many do more than 10? The reason I ask is that I am a true believer that our caller's equipment is not suitable for me. Okay? I was using a Hilton and a yak stack. I go to the chapel service prior to my calling, and there's 10,000 watts of power in a chapel service in a contemporary Christian service. I'm not kidding you, they're moving the walls in there. And then I set up my equipment, and it sounds like it's coming out of a nothing. So I went back to my old, can you imagine this? Old Newcomb speakers from the 1970s and had them revoice called and coned to modern day specs. And I now push them with 1,000 watts. The youth of this country do not listen to music. They feel it. My record collection, or my music, a lot of it is square dancing, but a lot of it is classic rock, because classic rock had phrasing. The kids know the old classic rock. They don't know anything that was written 5 years ago, because it does not stay with you. The phrasing was not there, and it doesn't stick. But they will remember the classic rock. The adults remember the classic rock. The adults remember, I used Al Hurt Sunday. I'm always hunting for music that will fit me. I'm always hunting for music that has no lyrics. And the reason is there are many, many times during the year I'm inside the sanctuary and we're dancing in a multi-use sanctuary. I cannot have anything that mentions drinking, womanizing, bars, or sex. And you can't find country western music. I downloaded 20 tunes, the top 20, in 2005. 18 of them were not usable for anything. So I really critique the music that I use, and the ministers know it. And they tell each other, and that's how I get my bookings. I also don't take breaks. I was outside a hall, and I was listening to someone in their presentation. I take no breaks during the evening. A lot of my dances are outdoors at night, and there's no way I'm going to have a break take place and have high schoolers go off into the shadows. There's too many hormones at work. I don't care if it's a Baptist camp or a Methodist camp. You don't let them take breaks. Now, adults, the only time I take a break with an adult group is if I'm asked to. Most often, I will talk for a minute about the dance that I'm going to do. Not really descriptive, but I'll talk about the music. And so that they relax and they rest and they catch their breath and the blood gets back in circulation properly. But other than that, there's no breaks. But I always shut the dance down with something that's so simple that they will go home feeling that they were totally successful. And when I was teaching lessons, I never taught anything 30 minutes prior to the end of the evening's lessons. Nothing was taught. That was all repetition, locking in what they had learned over and over so that when they went home, they didn't feel stupid and not want to come back. I think in teaching, how you teach and how you make them feel successful is the most important thing. If they feel that they're really successful in what they're doing, they're going to be back the second night and the third night and the third night. When I started square dancing, I didn't go to the first night of lessons. I went to the second night of lessons. So I had some catching up to do. But the caller was so good that when I left there, Hot Rod had drugged me in there, and on the second night of lessons for me, I was dragging Hot Rod. So I have some handouts up here, and I gave them a couple of years ago at the Beginner's Dance Seminar because I want to know what the conditions are of where I'm going to be prior to being there. Many people use contracts. I don't. I ask questions and I fill out a form. I know the condition, whether it's indoors or outdoors. Every once in a while, Hot Rod has really put it to me. This is my wife, by the way. I end up with a dance that was outdoors that we didn't know was outdoors. It was December the 18th. It was 34 degrees, and I didn't even have a jacket. And I had to call for 2 hours. So I end up knowing prior to the dance whether we're going to be on dirt, a gym floor, whether or not I can wear boots. There's only one dance that I've ever gone to that I've called that I was in shorts and tennis shoes. And I swore I'd never do that again. I'm always dressed properly as it was a square dance. And my wife wears a prairie skirt or something similar. Nothing frilly. And we track what we wear so that the next time we're booked, we don't wear the same thing. I also track, because a lot of these events, if we're at a camp, sometimes they will want to split the thing up, and they'll have a hayride going simultaneously to what I'm doing. They'll also have snow cones. And the big thing is the mechanical bull. How many of you have had a mechanical bull at an event that you called? This past year, I had 6 mechanical bulls. I think I told you about it, didn't I? Folks, a mechanical bull, the insurance policy on a mechanical bull is $25,000 a year liability. When you walk in that hall and there's a mechanical bull there, you can bet your bottom dollar they paid $800 to $1,000, and per every hour you can only put 40 kids on that mechanical bull. It's 1.5 minutes per child. So you look at the value of that mechanical bull in entertaining, and you look at the value of the caller that's getting $150 or $200 an hour, and he's handling 300 kids. And when I say $150 or $200 an hour, that's not my fee. But you look at that, and you look at the value that you provide to the people that arranged the event for you, and that mechanical bull is just too much money. And so when I find out that there's other forms of entertainment now, my fee goes up substantially, because I think I'm a lot better than a mechanical bull. I really do. I went to Panama City, Florida, and I got paid $1,000, and I called for 1 hour. A mechanical bull was there, and he operated for 1 hour, and they paid him $1,500. And I felt like I was dumb, because I was handling 360 students, and the mechanical bull in that hour handled 40. And I'm a lot better than he was, I guarantee you.
Just a sub-note there. We have for decades undervalued our product. And we need to recognize very clearly, especially in this arena of the party dance night, that our competition are mechanical bulls, DJs, and things of that nature. And we ought to be charging at least as much as they are. DJs are charging anywhere from $300 to $800 for the same period of time we would normally do a dance, depending upon the arena.
I'll tell you, in Houston, if it's a wedding, a DJ is going to make $1,200. You just count that. I did a wedding last year, and it was, when you do one-nighters, you don't know who's in that hall, okay? You have no concept of who might be there. I'm doing a dance for the Baptist Student Ministry at First Baptist Church of Bryan, Texas, and there's 400 college students dancing. Unbeknownst to me, there is a girl that's planning a wedding that fall. She's a senior, and she comes up, she says, "I want you to do my wedding." I had no idea. I thought, I gave her my card. We end up in a place, I swear, that wedding had to have cost $50,000. I am not kidding you. They have in Houston at a conference center a total full-size replica of the Alamo in San Antonio. And that wedding was in the Alamo. The DJ was sounding all the halls. And I looked up after that thing was over, and I called for about an hour and a half. And my website was on his website. He had taken my card and had, as a square dance caller for his events, locked me in so that I was available through wedding planning. So I don't know if y'all have got some stories about what y'all do, but I've been having an absolute blast ever since I decided not to call modern Western square dancing anymore. And I told this story several years ago, but I was calling to 500 middle schoolers in Oklahoma on a Thursday night, got in my car Thursday morning and drove back to Houston, Texas, and that evening drove down to Lake Jackson, called to 3 squares of people that the youngest person there was 70 years old. And you tell me what the difference was in the noise level of 500 middle schoolers and 3 squares that couldn't hardly raise their hands to applaud. And when I walked out of that hall, I said, that's the end of modern Western square dancing for me. Because it's the only problem you have as a one-night stand caller, you can't share with another person how much fun you're having. Because the only time you get to share it is when you run into callers at a convention like now. Because tomorrow night, you're going to be with a different group of people, and you're not going to talk about what you did the night before. As a club caller, you do a good dance, and you're down the road calling for another club, and they're talking about your dance. You don't ever get that. That ego trip is not there. It's an empty feeling when you leave, except that you know you did a good job, and they're going to call you back, and you're lined up to do some more. I don't know where we want to go from here because y'all are absolutely dead quiet. Yes. Use the mic.
I'm going to come up here because I want Otto to see an old Baptist. An old Baptist. I've been a Baptist since 1959, and I've been a caller since 1985, and I've been dancing since 1978. So I hate to burst your bubble, but
there are some Baptists that dance.
Here I am, yeah. Most people don't know it, but dancing is mentioned in the Bible 63 times.
I will tell you, there are so many denominations in Baptists, okay?
I've got to tell you, though, how I got this job at this big Christian camp. I got it because the former caller made a little mistake, and he was an excellent caller, one of the top callers in the state. But he made a mistake and called an oft-colored joke. And I mean, it was pretty raunchy. And that night, when he picked up his paycheck, the owner of the place said, "This is your last paycheck." And he departed, so I was hired, and that's how I got my job.
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's a club in Houston that Bobby Byer teaches now. I taught classes there for 7 years, and I'm not kidding you. I taught and graduated over 70 squares in 7 years. But the club caller, when I first started there, told an Aggie joke in a club that had about 70% Aggies. And he was fired that night. You don't tell Aggie jokes to people that don't want to hear them. You got to know your clientele.
Christian camp, right?
I guarantee you.
I got to lighten the mood here a little bit. The first night that I auditioned for this group, and I've called since then for 16 years, all summer for 16 years, so evidently I'm doing something right. But anyway, the first night I auditioned for this group, I didn't ask questions, and I found out after I got there that the entire group was physicians, surgeons, and dentists. And of course this made me nervous because, wow, these guys are super educated, degrees, all that stuff, you know. My wife and I started to teach a very simple mixer dance, and I could not get those people through anything. Finally, I just said, well, we're going to take a little short break. And at this break, this dentist walked up to me, and he says, "You're really having trouble, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm really having trouble." He said, "Let me tell you what your problem is." He says, "You're dealing with physicians, dentists, and surgeons. And if you stop and think about it, right and left for them is a reverse because they're thinking from a patient standpoint. If you stop and think about it, that's true. And how many surgeons have cut the wrong leg off or operated on the wrong part of the anatomy? That's true. So I had to think fast on my feet. So when I started again, I said, okay, we're having a little problem. We're going to solve that. Everybody that has a wristwatch that's left-handed and has a wristwatch on your right hand, take it off and put it on your left hand. And there was 2 or 3 changed over. I said, now shake hands with your partner, which they did. I said, okay, now we got to straighten out which is left and which is right. A couple of times I'm going to call wristwatch and handshake. And you know, the rest of the night went beautiful, made a big joke out of it. They thought it was great, and we went through the whole night great. But if you're doing one-night stands, and I've done literally hundreds and hundreds of them, if you're going to do them, make sure you know your audience. Make sure that you ask questions, because there's different expectations out there of what they want. But a one-night stand, frankly, Otto, I'd love to sit in on one of yours. I'd like to watch it, because I think you probably do a whale of a job.
When I work with the schools, and I call in 5 schools, about 6 schools, I never tell them that they have to have a right-left grand or a left alaman. I tell them all I'm going to do is give them square orientation. Who's the heads and who's the sides? And circle left and circle right, and show them a proper promenade. That's all I want them to do. And they've got a month in which to get that done. And from that point, the first thing I want the kids to know is my voice. And probably I'm in a different situation than most other people that call in schools, in that I'm not there to teach. Okay? Anything that I do that's going to be new to these kids, and there's a lot, has to be done in such a manner that it's easily understood, because I'm there on Parent-Teacher Day or during the rodeo season of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So it's Go Texan Days. And the parents are there, and the kids are dressed with the freckles and the pigtails and the boots and the hats and the whole 9 yards. So I have to adapt to what I feel at the moment they're capable of doing. And I was talking about it Sunday. I took Sasha and totally added 24 new beats of work in that dance so that I did not have the kids running around. 5 or 6 years ago, I used a serpentine. I would take a group of kids and I would wrap them up and I'd do grand marches. But when you start wrapping and they're going in a reverse direction coming back out, you have some that will pull and stretch and tug and do all the different things. So I control the floor. I don't let it get out of hand, because a lot of these schools, my classrooms would end up with 250 of 5th graders and 250 4th graders, and you just can't let the control of the room get away from you. And so, and at the same time, I've done schools where I do 5th grade, turn around, that's half the 5th grade, and do 5th grade again. And I guess my repertoire has gotten so deep that at the end of the evening or the day, I never repeated a tune. I never repeated a figure, so that the school teachers are just sitting there in amazement, because nothing repeated in 6 hours of calling. And so I guess I have a deep repertoire. I don't know. But I'm constantly trying to figure out how to entertain differently. I videotape 1 out of 4 dances, and I critique. I critique such things as voice, not how I sound, but voice inflections. As a German, have a short temper. I have to control myself. I work really extremely hard at being extremely pleasant, showing a lot of patience, and always using words of encouragement in every presentation. And I go back through my tapes and I look at my presentation as it would sound to a person that has never heard me before. And yesterday we were talking in one session about emails, how you don't see people face to face and how wording can be misconstrued. I really look at that. I look at dead time. A video camera records seconds, frames, minutes, and hours. And I look for dead time. I clock a videotape for dead time, for teaching time, and I keep track of how much time I teach, how much time I'm in transition from one pattern to another, and how can I better that. Because my job is to call and have them dancing almost constantly. And I strive to reach that percentage of my time to be the greatest in dance and not in instruction and not in setups.
So, I'll get to you in just a second. A couple of things coming back to the Dancing Without Destination theme of this session. One of the things that I think we're focused on is the fact that we're trying to give people an experience. And that experience is an experience of fun and entertainment. It's not aimed at getting them anywhere. There's no place they're going. We're not trying to get them to be dancers next week. We're trying to get them to be dancers tonight and to entertain them using dance. So when we say without destination, we're saying we're not expecting them to dance next week. We can't expect them to dance next week. What we can expect is that they're going to have a good time right now. And it's our job as professionals to ensure that. We've heard for years that, I danced in elementary school, I danced here and I didn't like it. Well, that's because we didn't do our job. If we're doing what Otto's doing in his elementary programs, the kids are walking away with, I had a great time. And whether they ever dance again doesn't matter, but they're going to be more likely if they had danced at some point with Otto than they are with some of the folks that we hear about. The point being is entertainment. Entertainment is what we're all about.
I want to tell you about that dancing to Otto. I had a dance in Oklahoma at a youth camp. And prior to calling, the facility asked me if I could do 2 more dances in 2 weeks. And when I looked at my calendar, the dances they wanted me to do were on Thursday and on Saturday. And I had a Girl Scout camp, day camp, in Houston on the Friday. I called a caller in Houston and asked him if he could do it. And then I called the client that had booked me. The caller did it, and I told him, don't you ever quote a price. You take the check. Because I call for Girl Scout camps. If there's 150 girls, they're going to pay me $350 to do that camp. And I knew that caller will call for 125. So he took that dance, and I kept my 2 dances in Oklahoma. The next year, I called for the Girl Scout camp and a second Girl Scout camp. And the next year, the 2 Girl Scout camps. If you do a fantastic job, you will always be doing that job. And if you do a really great job, and you're within the ministry of the church, as the ministers move from church to church, your clientele grows. And when they go to the Southern Baptist Youth Ministers Conclave, and there's 900 ministers, and they're exchanging like we do here, and they're talking about, what do you do at camp? Well, we have square dancing. Square dancing, I didn't think kids liked that. Oh, man. Well, who do you use? Well, you got to contact Otto and Hot Rod. And we end up with the phone calls. And our June is just, I've got 1 week that's totally vacant in June, and I can't believe it. But it's the week that I always do the Girl Scout camps. So I know I'm going to have camps to do. But June, we have 14 dances. We have to go to Florida 3 times. And, and they'll sell for you. But I also sell. I have a business card in my hand. I saw 2 gentlemen in suits out in the lobby. I said, "Are y'all enjoying your stay?" "Yes, we're checking to have a convention here for our corporation we're executives in." I said, "Great. We're here as callers, as entertainers, and I call for corporations. I just did a Shell Oil event." He says, "Give me your card. I'll give you mine." I said, "I do team building in corporate events so that we take executives from all over the country and put them together so that the barriers are lowered and they all enjoy each other's company. And if they have their spouses with them, then the whole corporation is benefited by that. And guess what? He wants me to contact him when I get back.
So we got about 3 minutes. Don has a question or a comment.
Both. My question is, you're calling continuously for 2 hours without a break. Do you get a drink of water?
Believe it or not, they'll bring me something. They know that I'm telling you folks, in June, I'm calling outdoors. I only have 2 dances that are indoors. And let me tell you folks, at 100 degrees in South Texas and 90% humidity, I go to those dances with 4 towels, my own ice chest of water, because some of the camps I might do thirds. 1 hour, a new group, the next hour, a new group, the next hour. It'll be a 3-hour event. But it starts at 9 o'clock at night, and we'll shut down at midnight.
Well, my question I'm asking then, why don't you give them a break so they can get a drink of water?
No, the whole deal is the program that I do is so simple, you're not going to believe. They will leave a circle, a couple dance, as a couple. And they will be signaling those that have been just taken a refreshment break to come in and take our spot. I'm not kidding you. They are lining up their replacements.
We need to cut this off. I've got a committee.
Yeah. My comment also for myself, I get booked over and over also. And my last dance of the evening is a Virginia Reel. And every time I get booked again, the kids are coming up and say, "Are you going to do the Virginia Reel?" And that'll be my last dance. But I get booked over and over and ask for the same dances all the time.
I use the Virginia Reel if I have...
In 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
In here?
Right here. Right here.
Okay. I use a Virginia Reel only if I have an even account. Okay? Unless I use the non-real Virginia Reel. But we walk into a school and they are calling out Hot Rod. My biggest stick is my wife. She really is. She never says a word, very seldom ever speaks, but she's my stick.
So thank you, Otto, for being part of the panel, and thank you all for coming this afternoon.